can be dirty. Things that are dirty, that's the world of hygiene. You can deal with it in terms of hygiene. You don't deal with it in terms of legislation. And the only place where the concept of dirty language exists is within the realm of religious doctrine. Those people who believe that you shouldn't use certain words because it's just the wrong thing to do because of their religion. That's why I say it goes back to the church and state issue. The average guy speaks colorful American English with all kinds of words in it. And what are we going to turn this country into if you can't talk normal in your everyday life?
Do you think newspapers and all media in general didn't pick up on the other half of the Judge Jose Gonzalez decision where they only reported the arrest of 2 live crew and they didn't report anything about the fact that police were wrong for using a form of prior restraints by telling record store owners if they sold a record that they would be arrested before he made his decision? Do you think that the average guy understands what prior restraint means? Remember, the reason why this stuff works is because the educational system in this country has been sabotaged. If you take the money out of the education system, and if you censor the books that are available in the schools, and you make sure that the teachers that are in the schools are basically incompetent, and then what are you graduating? You're graduating a bunch of people who are fairly easy to manipulate because they really aren't very smart. Not that they're bad people, they just never had a chance to get hard data. They were never given real facts about the real world in these times. They've been fed a bunch of nothingness. And they come out of these schools completely unconcerned with real issues, and it's party time. Now, this works to the advantage of a government that is trying to create a police state, but it's exactly the wrong thing if you were to look at the nation as a business which has to compete with other nations which are also businesses. You have a bunch of people graduating from school who are virtually unemployable. They can't read, they can't write, they can't spell, they can't count. What do you have them do? You can only sell so many hamburgers. So until we do something about helping people to improve their intellectual machinery, helping them with the job of sorting out all the facts that are bombarding them in a complex world, then the bad guys are going to get away with a lot of these issues because it's easy to fool the average American because he's just been kept stupid. Is it the media's fault then that side of the story wasn't properly reported?
Oh, I think there's plenty of blame to go around all over the place. I think a lot of it has to come back to the people who allowed the current batch of legislators to sit in their chairs and to write the laws and to run the nation's business. Most of those guys have no business running any business.
Do you think that there was a victory here for prior restraint?
Perhaps, but the real thing that happened in the Gonzalez decision was that in stating that the album was obscene, he stated the reason it was obscene is because when you heard it, it led you to have filthy thoughts. Now, he's creating the ground floor of legislation for thought control. If an album can induce a person to filthy thoughts, and if the album should then be banned because it induces filthy thoughts, then any other product or object which induces filthy thoughts should also be taken off the marketplace because it might harm children, like a greeting card or an automobile that had a piece of chrome on it that was too suggestive looking, or certain vegetables in a supermarket. All these things we have to protect our children from this. I mean, that's the logical follow-through on any kind of a decision wherein it says the object induces the consumer to experience filthy thoughts. Thoughts. Now, if his decision is upheld, we have the beginning of case law here. This is a decision that could be referred to by other people in state legislatures and say, based on the Gonzalez decision, this zucchini is against the law.
And what obscenity is determined by local standards. What do you think about the whole outgrowth of Dallas and Sacramento and Southern Florida decision?
Because the network of all of these right-wing extremists is pretty far and wide, and California has always been the home to every kind of kook and crackpot that you can think of. Unfortunately, California still works in spite of the fact that we have an abundance of these types of people here, and so it comes as no surprise that the topic would be taken up by some legislative body somewhere in California. Remember, it was the California city that banned Little Red Riding Hood, and every state legislature is full of little small-time crooks who just got elevated to a legislative chair. Who knows how they did it, but they're in there. And because of the way government works, if they write a law, you're stuck with it. Just because you were too busy to pay attention to who was running for what seat and to make a decision based on whether or not that guy ought to have a position of power over you.
You don't think the average California voter then, who has all the propositions to read through and read the arguments for and against, actually reads them?
Even if you did read the pamphlet that you received, they're worded in such a way that unless you were a lawyer, you can't figure them out. And if you're Hispanic and you're not really familiar with complex language in English, you haven't a clue. So most of the political advertising is based on heartstring tugging. It's not about issues. It's not about the intellectual merits of a case. It's not about facts. It's about buzzwords and pulling on the old heartstrings. The statistic that I heard the other day was that in the mayoral race, only 10% of the eligible voters voted. 10%. 10%. Think about that. People in Romania are dying over voting rights, and they get really excited about elections because, it seems to matter to them. What do we got? 90% stayed away. We don't care. So if we don't care, then we really don't have the right to complain about the way things are. We just let it go. You stay home, you don't participate in democracy, then don't expect democracy to work.
How could people even have a clue then as to how to vote yes or no for the various propositions? And
you know what I do?
What?
I ask a lawyer. What does this say?
Unfortunately, not everyone can do that.
I know, but I mean, at least I take the time and spend the money to find out what does this actually say. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and have a lawyer just in order to read that ballot pamphlet, but there are ways to find out. Now, if I find out and somebody asks me, at least I've spent the bucks and I can help to explain it. Why don't we just take a look at it this way? If you have difficulty understanding, let's say KPFK could play a role in this. Anytime that little booklet comes out with all these propositions, why don't you get a lawyer on the air to say, this is what it says? You might even get a lawyer to do it for free, to make a radio star out of him. Please, Mr. Lawyer, come on here and tell us, what does this crap mean in this book? However, we're coming in second best to Arizona this season because Arizona has a law that is it's a law now, and it's even more ridiculous than anything that's been passed in California, and that's the Arizona dildo law. It has just been passed. It is now illegal in Arizona to own more than 5 dildos. Now figure it out. They debated this long and hard in the state legislature. What is the right number? What is the maximum conscionable number of dildos that a human being may possess in the state of Arizona? And 5 was the answer. Now I want to know how they're going to enforce the Arizona dildo law. Are we going to have dildo police coming to your home? Dildo police, how many you got in there? Coming in. 6, you're under arrest. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you 6 Dildo Bob. He's going down the river for 15 years. I mean, this is absurd. Now, these people are earning a salary for drafting legislation, and this is what they did. That's Arizona. So come on, California people, we got to catch up. Don't you think we need our own dildo law here? Perhaps with a death penalty attached to it. Show those dildo owners who's really the boss.
Getting back to obscenity all over the country, and at least the way the law is written, it says community standards. And as you mentioned earlier about when you said zucchini, do you think that local communities aren't going to think for themselves anymore? They were in Texas. Do you think they're going to base everything on the
What do you mean local communities won't think for themselves? First of all, you have a community deterioration. The whole concept of a community is evaporating before our very eyes. It's every man for himself, or hadn't you noticed?
How can we even say that
in California, the whole idea of a neighborhood, what is that?
So it's even impossible to deal with. If you're saying local standards and there really is no local community, how could you even
Who computes them? You can't even take a numerical average to create a database for the standard if you can't get people to fill out their census forms. How are you going to develop any kind of hard fact database to establish what a community standard is?
Two Live Crew was arrested on local and state obscenity statutes, but another thing that's looming large over the whole music industry is proposed record rating laws in about 20 states. Most of it's been killed for now, but there's a threat that if they don't police themselves, it's going to come back later. What's
your
feeling?
There'll always be that threat. The people who are making the threat will make sure it comes back later because they're never going to be satisfied. They already have albums with stickers on them. In fact, Two Live Crew had a sticker on it, didn't it? Did that protect them? There's no question that the people who want this they'll spend money because the money is tax-free for them.